Good morning. Good morning. It's great to see so many people already here. Welcome to Mindset, Heartset, Reset. We're excited to have you here today. Welcome if you're coming in from YouTube, Facebook Live, and Humanities Stream. We're so happy to be here with you again this week. Once again, we have an amazing show lined up for you. We can't wait for you to meet our guest as we continue our Conscious Business series. You're going to learn so much about leadership, consciousness personally, and how we really put this out into our professional lives and how that's going to ripple at a global scale. So I'm excited to be with you here today. My name is Jacqueline Way. I am one of the co-hosts along with Dr. Roshanak, who will be here with us in just a moment. And you're joining us here for Mindset, Heartset, Reset. We have a really dynamic weekly live show here. And our main goal is really to provoke introspection, cultivate compassion, and spark positive change in your life and around the world. Through our insightful discussions with really remarkable guests, we're going to give you some practical tools that are based on authentic real-life stories. And it's going to nurture and empower your own mindset, open your heart, and give you the courage to hit the reset button in your own life. So our mission is really simple. It's to expand love at a global scale with a vision to help humanity's future in one which we can all thrive. So welcome to the show today. Again, if you're coming in from YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or Humanities Stream, welcome to the show. We're excited to get started. And I'd like to introduce my beautiful co-host, Dr. Roshanak Hashimoon. Welcome to the stage, my friend. Great to have you here. Dr. Roshanak, as we fondly call her, is a credentialed computational, clinical, and behavioral neuroscientist. How lucky am I to get to work with such brilliance? Her work has supported and transformed countless lives all over the world. As the founder of Access to the Path, she combines the power and process of science with the emotional and spiritual intelligence that really will help you generate compelling and innovative strategies that will help you in your own life and businesses. You're going to become more prosperous. They got that word out today, prosperous and effective. And it's what we love about her most. She just brings so much to the show and to the table. Dr. Roshanak, welcome to the show today, and over to you.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. My lovely co-host, Jacqueline Way. I am so excited to welcome you back to our Conscious Business series, everyone. It's been so amazing so far, and we're still going. We have such a great guest who's going to bring us full circle today with our amazing circles of influence, right? Today, we're doing circles of influence from personal transformation to global impact. Our guest is Paul Tarell. I'll introduce you to him in just a moment. I'm super excited. Welcome everybody who's with us live. You get to ask questions and get some answers in the chat wherever you are, if you're on YouTube or Facebook or on the private platform. And if you're listening to the recording, we welcome you and hope that you will get as much out of the show as we have put into it for your benefit and for the great impact that we can create a world in which all can thrive. So to do that, business is an important part, as work is, of how we present in the world. And sorry, I had an echo there for a moment. So we're super excited to bring you our guest, Paul Tarell, who's going to talk about conscious business and conscious leadership on a much more practical, tractable scale. We are pulling back the curtains today. So we're talking about conscious business and conscious leadership because it's on everybody's lips, of course, and because the hottest topic these days is impact and influence, and everybody wants to make an impact and everybody wants to be an influencer and have influence. And so how do they do it? They do it, they want to do it making a living doing it. And that brings us to conscious business and conscious leadership. Today, we are dropping strategies and truth bombs so you can figure out how to do that. We're going to pull back the curtain on what it truly takes to be a conscious leader and to run a conscious business, how to be really highly successful as such a conscious leader, because it's important to become a conscious leader. But you'll see that as we go through the process with you, as Paul will, through his extensive experience and his extraordinary heart and mind, that when you do this in a way that is authentic, I know I use the word, then you're really going to, it's hard to not, you'd have to try to not be successful. So we're going to learn how to have conscious business that makes an impact. We're going to talk about the orbital effect framework and how someone can go from personal transformation to that global impact. And we're going to go beyond the theoretical ideas into actionable methodologies. You're going to learn how to protect conscious businesses and maintain your personal integrity throughout challenges. So yes, resilience, that's also on everybody's lips. This episode reveals how you can create lasting influence that spirals outward from you and into the world. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to my guest, Paul Tarell. Let me tell you a little bit about the amazing Paul. I'm a huge fan of his. He's brilliant. He's wonderful. He is a transformational leader that has spent the last decade facilitating the transition and growth of Gaia from a yoga products company to a global media platform, leading the evolution of global consciousness that reaches millions of people all around the world. During his 10 years at Gaia, he was exposed to, explored, and studied a variety of topics from quantum physics to sacred geometry. He weaved this tapestry of information into a unique perspective of consciousness that he continues to explore and expand. Paul has integrated this perspective into his approach in the business world, both in leading the internal organization and in interactions with external stakeholders. So he's got it all covered. Having recently left Gaia, Paul is now a conscious entrepreneur, strategic advisor, and investor focused on helping spiritually aligned entrepreneurs and businesses scale and thrive. Welcome, Paul. So excited and so honored to have you join us.
Thank you, ladies. I'm excited to be here, and you've pumped me up, so hopefully I can follow through.
I know you can.
We know. We have no doubt.
I've gotten to know Paul through a few conversations with him, and I have to say he is the real deal, a rare breed, and really an asset to all of us who are interested in creating a beautiful life for ourselves and a beautiful world for all of us, because we all live in that world. And on the way there, to do it through what we love to do, our creativity in creating what we do, whether we're an employee, an employer, a founder, or whatever. So super excited to have you, Paul. I know, Jacqueline, you want to start off, so let's go.
I do. Well, first of all, I got to say we're so blessed to have Paul as part of Humanity's team as well, and taking all of his knowledge and wisdom and being part of the team here at Humanity's team. So thank you so much for that, Paul. And we're going to start right from the beginning today, because I think sometimes, depending who's joining us and who's going to listen afterwards to the recording, we want to start at the very beginning of what conscious and conscious businesses, how they're tied together and how they're not separate from personal and all areas of our other life. So, Paul, what is consciousness to you, both personally and in business? Is there even a difference?
No, I don't think there is a difference. Part of my study and my personal work, and you'll see I'm wearing my shirt that I've worn every full moon since I got it in 2019 at Glacier, is this fundamental belief and knowing that we're part of an interconnected whole, really at the energetic level. And so we've created compartmentalizations of this is me and you are you and this is the business. But the reality is at the energetic level, it's all just intertwined energy. And we know from entropy that it's not created or destroyed, it just changes states. So that's been ingrained into me from a personal mindset. And then that radiates out as I think about all of the ripples of interaction that I have and the energy that I put out and by extension attract or repel to myself as I go through my day-to-day life.
So that we have no choice. It's going to ripple out into the work that we do. And as Dr. Roshnak had said, whether you're an employee at a company or you're one of those leaders, we have no choice, but that's going to ripple out because that's part of who we are.
Yeah, I think the key step for me is that is happening whether you're aware of it or not. And so then when you zoom in on what does consciousness mean at an individual level, it's the awareness of that concept that I just shared and the inquiry and exploration and curious mind to see how that all fits together. And then that gets you into the various rabbit holes that we'll probably go down today. But what's very popular in business today is intuition and gut feel. And that's really just different words for tapping into that connection that we as a mammal feel to a broader ecosystem that we were part of. We've just put a frontal cortex and an ego on top of it, and it's distorted the reality from how we are actually connected to things.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot these days, people are now having heart-centered leaders or chief heart officers at their organizations. Gary Vee has that with his right hand at Venier Media as well. And so we're seeing that shift already happening in larger organizations where they're really leading from their hearts, which really is the same words again that we're talking about, is it not?
I agree 100%. I think the way I started my career was as a very analytical left brain numbers person, and I explored that for a long time. I went to school, became business major with finance and accounting background, went to work at the Big Four, was an auditor, then went into industry and thought I wanted to be a Fortune 500 executive. And that's actually what got me to Gaia. And then I had a personal experience with my daughter being born somewhat unexpectedly 10 weeks early, right as I had just joined Gaia. And that was the event that you'll hear a lot of people talk about. That was the awakening for me to say, oh, there's something more here. And that's when the heart opened. And then all of the energy that really flows through your heart was able to connect to the brain. And then that's where this tapestry that I've weaved has been using the brain to intellectually understand things, but then using the heart and the body and the somatic response that we are benefited from, and using that to continue to find my true north, and ideally continue to evolve that as more and more things come to my awareness and attention.
I love that you said that, because you and I have had a brief conversation about this, but I had the same experience with my children when they came into the world. And as an adoptive mom, it's a whole other experience because there's such a heart connection that is required when, you're not giving birth to a child potentially. And so I love that you mentioned that, because now we can see where this is really tying in from the experiences in our personal lives, as you're telling us, right from the core of our family, having children, you were a hardcore finance guy in the, in the big lakes. And now you've made this big shift. Can we talk a little bit about this, kind of the nucleus or the core of conscious business? When you're looking at that, and, we can refer to certainly Gaia and certainly Humanity's team as well as both not-for-profit and business entities. What are we looking at when we're talking about that nucleus of a conscious business? What does that mean to you?
I think it starts with the individual, and whether that's the CEO or any person within the company, you're not going to have a conscious business unless every individual is aware of the give and take that they have with that energy exchange in the environment around them. And I think that's really the key for me is if we approach our personal interactions that we can then extend into the business world as I need to win no matter what, that's not going to really allow for the space of consciousness to understand that we're all part of a connected whole. And I actually might feel like I'm winning in my ego-driven self, but in reality, as a greater whole organism that we are, it's not. It's really taking away from one to build another. And we know that nature likes homeostasis and equilibrium. And so that's going to come back to you in likely a negative way at some point in the future. And people might call that karma or whatever. But I think that's really the key for me at the business level is it's not at the business level, it's at the individual level, both how they treat themselves and then how they treat the immediate people around them, both at home and at work, and then how that ripples out. Because you can start to see as you look at all these interconnections, we're all nodes on a bigger network. And if one node is causing challenges, we know that through computer viruses, that virus can spread and it starts to affect the whole system. And I think you can see that in your personal life. A bad mood is contagious in a very negative way, but so is a smile that you pass forward. So that's the mindset that I have as I look at business and my interactions is it's not about business per se. It's about being a good person and allowing me to think about consciously, what is the impact that I want to have on the people around me? Do I want to be spreading a negative mood, or do I want to be spreading a positive mood that might shift that person's day? And then by extension, through the butterfly effect, the trajectory of their whole life. And that's a bit of an overstatement. But as I look back on my life, I can look at very specific points in time that I didn't really understand then, that now with the context of time and a little bit of maturity and wisdom, I can look back and see how things were interconnected and where things went left versus right and how I ended up where I am today.
I love that. Okay, I have to turn it over to Dr. Oshanak. She's waiting.
Chomping at the bit. So this reminds me of the orbital effect framework. We talked about these concentric circles. So I like to think of it, we're talking some physics here today. Let's talk physics. I love it. When we look at atoms, there's the center with the protons and the neutrons and the nucleus. And then outside you have these electrons that are spinning around. Imagine, for those of you who would like a bit more clarification, Saturn and its rings, right? So you have this sort of center body, and from that center body, like a ripple effect, are these concentric circles, these orbitals. And so, we love self-similarity. When you talk about the work that you do as an individual and a conscious individual, and how that affects others. So we know, even scientifically, although we've all experienced it, we know from studies that when you are in a good state, that you have more of the qualities that we all champion. So patience, understanding, kindness, compassion, etc. And so there is this actual scientifically evidenced process that occurs, or mechanism of action that occurs. So when each of us individually works on ourselves, how does that, let's say I'm a founder or a CEO or a leader in a company, how does that affect my business? And as we like to say in science, is it necessary but not sufficient in order to create a conscious business?
Yeah, so I think for me, the method of action that you're speaking about and what the personal practices allow for is effectively reprogramming that default mode network that's in your brain that when you're not consciously thinking is running. And I would say most people that aren't on some conscious exploration don't understand the impact of all of the things that they're being exposed to in the external environment and the impact that that has on them from that default mode network, and how they show up as a base primed organism ready to act or react. So what I mean by that is, if you're exposed to all the negativity that's on the news and all the negativity that's out in the world, and you fixate on that, you're actually pre-programming yourself to have a negative response to anything that's going to happen to you. Right. So now as a individual, you can control that by saying, I'm going to create the space, whether it's a seated meditation, a walking out in the forest meditation, spending time with your kids, playing music, whatever it is, I'm going to create the space for all that noise to move to the periphery and just spend time with me, right? And what me actually means. And so the deeper that you go into that exploration, the more that you tune in to your body and the somatic response that your body will give you, so that then you can understand, am I in a pre-wired state to be triggered because I feel all my energy down in my stomach and my lower part of my body? Or have I cleared myself to the point where I've let that go and now I can feel it more up here, and I can then start to use the power of my heart, which is actually a much stronger magnetic sender and receiver of energy than any other part of your body. Then I can start to connect with the other individual. And now I have a superpower, because I can go into something with an open heart and feel someone else's energy and know how they're pre-wired to be, whether they know it or not. And so I can then use, again, my conscious awareness to start to influence the way that that interaction goes, versus two wired people that are just waiting for something to trip them to butt heads and then have it spiral out of control. So that's where the personal work comes from, and really being able to do the deep exploration of your body and your mind and allow it to communicate with you the way that it's meant to.
So basically what you're saying is, once we know how to reset ourselves, because we can be thrown off balance through affective stimuli, those are the things that occur that affect us, right? In science, we call it affective stimuli,
Mhm.
and we can be reactive rather than responsive. So a conscious leader who practices spiritual intelligence, those spiritual practices like meditation that changes the structure and function of the brain, allowing us to change, literally, speaking of the default mode network, for example, the level of activation in areas like the PCC, which is the posterior cingulate cortex. And so when something happens, we literally, biologically, as we've changed that structure and function, are able to not become immune to our emotions or not have them. We're very much connected to those emotions, but we aren't being reactive, right? So people think
Yes.
stoics are people who don't have emotions. You can become a bit more stoic in that you are connected, but you're not being ruled by what is going on. That makes us better leaders. That makes us better friends. That makes us better partners, and so on and so forth. So when we practice these things, we end up recentering ourselves. We end up resetting ourselves so that if we've been thrown off kilter, we're now back and recalibrated. And also, we have put ourselves in a position where we wouldn't be so reactive in the first place. Great. So now I've done all those things and I am a conscious person. Tell me, as a conscious person, is it enough for me to now have a conscious business if I'm a founder?
No, because I don't think you don't make a decision to become a conscious person. You devote yourself to a personal practice that you have to constantly bring
Right. So
yourself
we're
back
talking about,
to.
yeah, we use the term so loosely these days. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
going with it. As a neuroscientist, I will let you know that this is extremely hard for me, but I'm working with it. So
Yeah.
what we mean is to bring more awareness and higher levels of being present to what is going on. That's what we mean when we're talking about consciousness or higher consciousness,
Yeah.
etc.
And so that's I guess where I was going with that is that, yes, we could geek out on the chemistry and the fact that your emotions create chemistry and your body feeds your brain. Joe Dispenza talks about that a lot. But I think the reality is that you need that personal practice to bring yourself back to center so that you can always be operating from that place of, this is how I want to operate in the world, knowing that things are going to be happening to me all the time. And if I don't have that space to say, this is happening, it's not happening to me, it's just happening, and I can choose my response to it, then you can start to ripple that out into your day-to-day interactions, creating a positive environment so that your business can be a positive environment. And we would call that conscious. But what I say with consciousness is it's really just the awareness of the impact that you're having on the greater organism that we call the world. And it's not a buzzword, in my opinion. It's just a name that we've given to a thing that is there scientifically and energetically, even if we don't fully understand it and have the words to articulate it in a way that the layperson can understand. So we've labeled it, right?
So tell us what the connection then is, or what the process or mechanism of action is, or the connection between a conscious leader, founder, and a conscious business.
So I
How
think
does that work?
yeah. So I think that the saying that most people that are on a spiritual path are probably familiar with is as above, so below. The business environment is the same mechanism of action, in my opinion, right? So if I am not a conscious leader and in pursuit of being a conscious leader in all of my interactions, then there is no way for my business to truly be a conscious business. It will be marketing and buzzwords, but at its core, it will not be that. And conversely, I can't have a conscious business if I am not a conscious individual, because again, it's all part of the same organism. So when we say conscious businesses today, we've carved off a thing and bifurcated it and said, this is what it means to be a conscious business as a seemingly independent organism. The reality is that business isn't an independent organism. It's made up of a bunch of individuals that are having interactions with all of the other individuals that come around it. And so you can have an ethos as an organization to be conscious, and that influences how you hire, how you promote, how you go find partners, who you do business with or who you don't do business with. But at the end of the day, that can only be executed by individuals that are conscious and understand and embrace and instill those ideas into themselves, and then again extend that out. So it's almost the toroid field of having to feed itself from both sides.
So then what are the processes? So again, it's necessary to be conscious, as it were, the way we're using that word,
Yep.
a conscious leader to have a conscious business, but it's not enough to just be a conscious leader to have a conscious business. Could you tell us specific tools and strategies or practices that you know of in your extensive experience that you've had that would help people to create that conscious business coming from a place where they themselves are doing the practice?
Yeah, I think the first thing is really just the acknowledgement that everyone's on a journey, and you can make the decision to be conscious now. And that means then you are going to start doing the work to continue to evolve that understanding. It's not just a label that you can give yourself and then all of a sudden you're it. And it's not like you're going to achieve some level of consciousness and then stay there. The external dynamics are always evolving, so you have to continue to evolve with them. So I think from a personal practice perspective, something that I've always done, because we're talking way up here at a very theoretical level, is how do you bring that down into the practical level, or the dirt, as this mental performance mastery coach that I trained with, Brian Kane, speaks about: plant it in the dirt. And his concept, which I have personally instilled, and he put a name to it, it's called the 1% intention. And this is, how do you do something consistently for a small amount of time that compounds every day? And 1% of a day is 14 minutes and 24 seconds. And so my personal 1% intention to be the person that I ultimately want to continue to strive to be, which is better every day, is that 15 minutes of mindfulness that I do. And that can be on the mat in seated meditation, or it can be in some other method of creating that internal space to allow me to process all of these things and really think through: this happened, this was my reaction, is that the way I wanted it to happen? If not, what would I do differently? And then here's the magic: you can actually change the future based on how you want to interpret the past, because you can show up with that next interaction with that person and act as if you acted the way that you want to, and they'll kind of entrain to it, right? Because we have this convoluted belief that everyone's going to remember everything that happened that I said. The reality is most people are only running their internal talk track. And so you can show up differently. Whereas if you show up and have that negative energy from the prior interaction, you're going to preload that conversation. So I think that's a practical tool that I use, is really that 15 minutes every day to center myself, review the day ahead or the day before, and decide, where did I not act in alignment with the way that I want to act, and what am I going to do differently as a result of it? I think that's a very practical tool that people can use.
So I'm just going to finish this little line up here, and I know you want to ask something, Jacqueline. So when we're talking about having circles of influence, or this orbital effect framework that we had discussed previously, it starts with us as the nucleus of the business, correct? That's what Jacqueline was also referring to earlier. And then there's that next orbital level out, which goes into the interpersonal relationships. So if I understood you correctly, what you're really focusing on when you're talking about conscious business are the relationships that we have within the time that we are together in a professional setting. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you take that inner circle of me, let's call it, and I am conscious of the impact on the next ripple circle out from me, which is the people that I interact with, then you can continue to extend that out, which is then, okay, now I am me. We're interacting as a business, right? We've called it a group of people that is a business. And now that business can start to instill those principles in it, in how it acts and treats the vendors and the employees and the customers and the environment and all of the things around it. Someone put in the chat, your actions speak louder than your words. That's exactly it. How am I acting and how am I behaving? Not what am I saying? It's what am I doing? And that's really the key of it. And even one lower below that, which is, what is the intention of why I'm doing this thing? Because that gets all the way back to the core of what we talked about, which is this energetic frequency, because the intention of what you're doing is actually the thing that the broader organism responds to, not the words or the specific actions, but actually the intention, because that intention is the precursor to everything that comes after it.
Right. And we recognize that. Even there's an expression in Persian I'll say it in Persian and Farsi. It's a befamo beshin betamag. It's three different ways to say sit down. So it's kind of like, please be seated, sit down, and put your butt in the chair. sit your you know what down. They're also kind of conveying the thought, the action of sitting down, but the way that you are using the language, first of all, conveys a lot of the energy. But then even like if I were talking to someone or someone were talking to me, like if Jacqueline turned around to me and was like, shut up, it would be fine between us. But if somebody else turned to me and said, shut up, I'd be like, excuse me,
Right.
so that it does, that energy does come through. We sense that from each other. And a lot of that is shown in body language, in intonation, in cadence. And there are a lot of sensual, that means it comes through your senses, cues that we aren't necessarily conscious of, but that we pick up. And then there's, of course, the energy that everybody feels. For example, like you go into a place and you go, ooh, I know something bad just went down here, right? Or what a great vibe. Let's stay here. It's got a great energy. We say that. We use it in our, daily vernacular. And yet when we focus on it, it somehow seems woo-woo, which it actually isn't, right? So
No, 100%. I think from a music perspective, that's a good point there. It's what's the music that you're listening to, and is it entraining you to be in a higher vibrational state or in a lower vibrational state? So, I listen to a lot of different types of music. If you listen to some hardcore death metal, like real power minor chords, you just feel in an agitated state. And they're doing that on purpose because that's the emotional response that they want their audience to connect to. Conversely, if you go to, like, my wife and I just went to a Pearl Jam concert last year, and Eddie Vedder can move that crowd to a higher state of emotion, unlike any musician I've ever seen. And it was a felt experience. Yes, the music was amazing, but it was a felt experience. And it was because of the way that they use the harmonics of the music and the lyrics that they choose, so that the entire audience entrains to it. Because at the end of the day, we're all organisms that are going to come to calibration with whatever's around us. And so again, if you're in a negative state, you will be, and you're not aware of it, you will be then bringing everyone down to the negative state around you. And then all of a sudden you're going to shift out of that mood and be like, why is everyone so grumpy? But the reality is, it's you had an impact on it. And conversely, if you're in a grumpy environment and you acknowledge that and do the things to keep yourself in an uplifting state, and you do it in an authentic and intentional way, the people around you will start to come up as well.
I love that you said that. Maybe that explains the whole Swiftie movement, right? With Taylor Swift being able to control, millions of people at her fingertips, and they all just go right to her frequency. I think that's a beautiful example we're seeing right now, and so many other artists on so many levels. So I love that you use music as that beautiful example of a vibration that we hear, because we can't see it. Right? You can't see music when it's coming in. And that's like the frequency between us, right? We can't see that frequency exchange, but we know that it's there. So, I want to put this question to you because, as somebody that works in the financial world and has seen both sides of the financial world, just the hardcore business, I'll give it that kind of Wall Street feeling, and then moving over to an organization like Gaia, which would be a very different experience, I'm sure. Let's talk about the ROI, of consciousness in business. And for those of you that don't know what ROI stands for, it's the return on investment. Because I've been blessed that I travel in the happiness world, and we talk about this as how happiness actually has a huge effect on your business and the ROI in your life, from your dinner table with your family all the way through to your business. Can you talk to me about this return on investment when we start coming from a place as leaders in a business? What's the return on investment for companies and organizations, and even at your dinner table, when we start to take what you've been talking about today and applying this awareness to the world around us?
Sure. I'm going to tie it back to frequency because I think it will help us. So if you think about a frequency, it's a sine wave, right? It goes up and down. Duration and amplitude is what creates the sound that you hear if it's in the audible range. So if you think about what we're talking about and the return on the investment in it, what I'm really saying is, as a conscious individual, I'm trying not to get too high or too low, because we've probably all experienced where you have that massive outburst, either positive or negative, and then you have to recover back to where you were. And really, the bigger the amplitude of that sine wave, so if this is the bottom and it's going to go down, the bigger your reaction either direction, the more you have to work to get back to stable. And the more volatile you are, meaning the more up and down you go, the more energy you're expending actually going nowhere. So if you think about this principle applied into the business environment, one of the most valuable assets we have as individuals and as businesses is our attention and our energy. And if we're wasting our energy on having a bad interaction with someone and then having to spend an hour or 2 hours or a week getting back to a place where I was before I had that interaction, how much time and energy are you expending going nowhere rather than forward? So now think about if you came into a business environment and said, I want to try and keep everyone in a as even keeled state as possible. And all of those up and down gyrations can start to be focused on inflecting the overall growth trajectory of the individuals and the businesses into a positive direction, as opposed to the up and down cycles that might happen in that highly volatile, non-conscious world. And you end up either going sideways or down. I think you can really start to visually see the potential ROI. How you measure it might be a little bit harder, but I think if you look at it from a personal perspective, and you mentioned the dinner table, I have 2 young kids, a 10-year-old that is, I mentioned before, she was the one that was early, and she's coming into her preteen years, which anyone that has the pleasure of a daughter will understand the situation that I'm going through right now.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I can't react to her. I just need to let her do her thing, because that's what she's going to do. The minute I react to her, then I'm moving up and down. And because she's 10, she moves through it way faster than I do. Right. And so then it ripples. And so then you got these 2 things that are oscillating in different timelines, but it just, you're going to end up wasting a lot of energy to repair things that you don't need to do if you just take the space to be like, okay, that's her action because she's exploring herself. I don't have to react to it and escalate the situation, albeit, there's certain circumstances that you do need to step into. But if we just gave ourselves the space to let more things go for a little bit versus being so wired with the pin already pulled on the grenade and ready to jump on every single little slight, you're going to have a way different environment around you. And then you're going to spend a lot of time that doesn't have a positive ROI on it, because all you're doing is getting back to zero.
I love that. Can we talk about it a little bit more? We've talked about the personal and we've talked about the interactions both close to us in business. Can we talk about the world at large? Yesterday was Earth Day here on this planet. It's become a beautiful day that has really spread at a global rate in regards to everybody. My feed on Instagram yesterday, that's all it was Earth Day. And it was beautiful to watch, and that's taken time. But how is this, how does this now affect humanity? What's the human impact at a broader scale when we start coming at the world with this lens and this life choice, both in that regard? And then how does this now, look at it when we're looking at it from people and individuals to the planet, and then shifting the prosperity literally of our world? How can we relate it to that broader picture of global impact? Because I think we need to I'd like to look at that layer just, for a few minutes, so people understand that it's not just your dinner table. It's not just your coworker at the water cooler, but it actually does affect the broader world around us, even though we may not be able to see. I can't see where you are right now, or Europe or China or any of the other places, but there's still a bigger, wider global effect.
Yeah. So one of the first books that I read when I got to Gaia was a book by Peter Russell called Global Brain. And this was really the first book that started to open me up to, wait, there might be something different here. And his whole premise behind his book is that the individuals on the planet are the functional equivalent of the neurons in the brain. And we've been populating the planet with people, and we're reaching roughly that 10 billion people mark, which if you look into in utero development of the brain, and keep me honest here, Dr. Roshnak, the brain develops all these neurons, and it's just like replicate. And then all of a sudden nature kicks in and said, okay, we're going to start over replicating and putting the greater organism at harm. And so let's stop replicating and start connecting so that we can work together. And I think that this is where we are as a planet and a species, is that we've reached the population density so that there's enough of us on this planet. We've connected ourselves through the internet and other means. So now we can start to create a globally interconnected humanity and actually start thinking as ourselves as a globally connected species, as opposed to where we've been for the last number of years of our development, which is individuals that are part of a tribe that are defending their territory against other tribes. And it's a very scarcity mindset of, I have mine, I have to protect mine, and I don't identify you as me. And so therefore I'm going to fight you or defend myself against you. And then now we're getting to a place with the mass spread of information and understanding, what happens in London or what happens in Israel, and then how that ripples back to here. I think we're elevating our awareness that we are a globally connected species living on an organism that's part of this global interconnection. And we need to start behaving differently, because to the starting point, the unconscious individual always acts in their best interest at the expense of everyone else. The conscious person starts to think about their impact on those around them. I think we're there as a population, even though it doesn't feel like it yet. I think from my personal study of frequency and vibration, I know that when you look at cymatics, this is the self-organizing principle of matter, that once it reaches its resonant frequency, it goes from highly distorted and chaotic into a beautiful image that's typically a sacred geometric little image. I think we're at the same place right now. This is the peak chaos right before there's that breakthrough that's going to allow us to snap into seeing it at a different level and solving it. And Steve Tarell talks about this at Humanities Team as this being the Galileo moment. And for those that don't know Galileo, he's the one that one of the ones that presented the heliocentric view of the universe as opposed to the geocentric view. And he was called a heretic, and we all know what happened to him. I think we're at this.
Let me translate that for people. That means that the Earth revolves around the sun, not that the sun revolves around the Earth. Go ahead.
Right. And all of a sudden, once that paradigm shifted, all of these things that were being seen but unable to be explained in the paradigm that existed before that shift, all of a sudden we had these massive breakthroughs in all sorts of science and understanding. I think we're at a similar place right now with consciousness and the planet, in that as opposed to us being a bunch of individuals that are just here to do our thing and then die, I think that there's starting to be awareness that we are a much bigger interconnected whole. And as soon as we shift from that mindset of I'm here to do a thing and then I'm gone, to, oh, wait, this is part of something bigger, then awareness can start to shift, and we can start to have this rapid expansion of information and knowledge that can help solve some of the problems that seemingly exist today in the planet.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I wanted people to see, all of those rings we were talking about earlier today, that, we talked a lot about the interactions we have with each other, but that really does affect the whole, whether you think about it or not. Sometimes when I'm out doing my morning meditations or my morning runs, I think just even, my breath, right, that connects us. And when we're taking those big breaths, that's going out into this atmosphere that connects the whole, right? And whether we think it's going to hit the other side of the planet, part of that is all part of the same breath, right? That we're all breathing in and breathing out. So I love that you shared that, so that it's our reminder, right? That we all affect the whole, and we're all part of that interconnection, because I feel that as well. So thank you for that. Dr. Roshnek, back over to you.
Okay, so hi. What you were talking about before, Paul, was it's synaptic pruning that occurs after our brains are making lots and lots of connections, and then we sort of come back to the ones that are the most needed and efficient and necessary, just because you asked me to keep you honest. Okay, loving this conversation. Paul, can you tell us, because we've talked about a lot and it's been beautiful and somewhat theoretical, meaning not so tractable, great practices and ideas, but tell me a story. We love stories, of an experience that you had that really drives home the point of how the practices that we learn and enact have a true effect on our interpersonal relationships, um, that has this sort of, you love to use the word fractal, and I'll use the self-similarity, that there is this, the way that you are at home, and then the way that you are at work with other people, and then the way that that moves out from the business to the larger community and the globe. Help us to see that visually through some anecdote or experience you have. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh, you're good. And I think, Jacqueline, this would be a perfect time to talk about what we talked about leading into this conversation. Because I think if you're not willing to
Thank you.
be authentic and transparent, then you can't live consciously. And so this is if
This is your
people that,
moment.
yeah. So I left Gaia in July of last year after 10 years of being there. And it was hard for me to do that because I had so fundamentally intertwined Gaia and my view and my family and kind of everything that had transpired, because I made a major shift from being in San Francisco, being a finance person. My wife and I moved to Boulder, Colorado for this opportunity at Gaia. And then we had my daughter. And so this massive growth on all bunch of dimensions happened. And what I realized as I was working through it is that the time had come for me to move on. And rather than do it in a negative way, I tried to do it in a positive and uplifting way to the organization, because being there for so long, it would have been hard. So I made the decision to leave. I communicated that and then worked with them over an extended period to ensure that they were set up for success as I exited that business. So that's a bit of a lead in to where I am now. Things happened that when I was at Gaia that, again, I had to do my own personal work to explore my part in it and what happened to it. But the external artifact of the thing that happened there was something that was potentially negatively perceived against me if people only looked at that thing. But again, I made my peace with it, and I moved on with an open heart and a clear mind, and every intention of going out in the world and continuing to do what I've done at Gaia, which is take a really good idea and help it grow into something that impacted lots of people. So now fast forward, I took a role about 5 weeks ago at a company, because they had reached out to me through mutual friends and kind of recruited me, and it seemed like a good opportunity. And it wouldn't be what you call a quote unquote conscious business. But I saw the opportunity to bring a conscious mindset into an otherwise quote unquote unconscious business and help to evolve it from the inside out, which by my own experience would also then allow it to be successful as a thriving organism. So I spent 5 weeks doing that. And then somehow someone found something on the internet about that thing that happened to Gaia, took it entirely out of context, blew it out of proportion. And after 5 weeks with being nothing but devoted to the company, the person who hired me called me on my way home from work and told me I'd been terminated. No discussion, no questions asked, because of their perception of what had happened with that event at Gaia. So here's the moment of consciousness and action versus reaction. It could have been very easy for me to get extremely cynical and start to manifest this out into negative emotions of anger and fear and frustration. But what I did is I hung up the phone, I took my deep breaths, I called someone who knew the whole situation, including the person that had introduced us, and I said, "Here's what happened." And he said, "That sucks, but you know what? It's okay. It happened for a reason. You did nothing wrong. This is a situation that was just inevitable. And so go home, be with your family." And so I did that. And so then the next day, after I had a sleepless night and processed all of it to the point of thinking about all the things that led to this, I started to activate around how do I move this forward in a positive way, not just for me, but for the overall benefit of everyone that's part of this organization and the people around it. And for me, because this was really an opportunity for the rubber to hit the road in terms of a very seemingly negative thing happened. I was able to transmute that into this is a thing that happened and it's uncomfortable and I can feel all of these emotions, but I don't have to let them dictate my actions. And now I've created the space and the opportunity to create that imprint on that organization through the way that I am exiting it and handling it. And hopefully some good will come of it from the way that this was handled and it doesn't get handled that way again. But more importantly, it's created clarity in my mind that I'm here to do bigger things as it relates to getting these messages out and really doing what I do with Humanity's team. And I had told Steve that I was kind of backing away, and this is hot take breaking news right here. I actually reached out to Steve this morning and I said, hey, some things changed. I think we might need to talk again. And so now what I'm looking at doing is saying, look, I'm in a place where I would rather put my energy into Humanity's team doing what it's trying to do, not for my personal benefit, but for the impact of those around me, knowing that if I am true to my kind of worldview and spiritual principles, the energy will come back in the way that it absolutely needs to. And so this gets back to that concept that we talked about on the pre-call, which is don't try to control the outcomes. Because when you try to control the outcomes, that's when you get chewed up and spit out. It's control how you operate in any given moment and then let the outcomes fall where they may, because we have a fallacy in our ego-driven view of the world that we can control things. We can't. We might get lucky and they happen the way we want, but that doesn't mean we controlled it.
I love this. Thank you so much. First of all, I have a lot to say to this. First of all, I applaud you. I would love to take a moment and say, you have helped countless people who are listening to this and who will be listening to this in removing the shame that might come unnecessarily from, because it happens to all the time. It happens all the time. Misunderstandings, getting fired for whatever reason, laid off, and people will hide that. They'll feel bad, like as if they did something so egregious as to deserve this, hurt. What? No. So first of all, thank you for correcting a horrible narrative that's out there that is incredibly damaging to people, all people, because as we said in the very beginning of the program, we affect each other, like it or not. Secondly, you showed us what it looks like to be brave, because courage only happens in the face of fear. And how can there not be fear, right? When we have sudden change that could be threatening to our livelihood, to our relationships, etc. So thank you for showing us what it looks like to have courage and to be brave, to come from a place of conscious awareness, to come from a place to shift from that fear to love, to show that there are other avenues that are available to us. So you embodied in telling the story. And I had no idea about what was going on here, you guys, by the way.
She missed this whole part.
And you know what? Everything happens the way it should.
Bingo.
And so I was just like, hey, Paul, tell us a story now. And so I didn't know that you had that much beauty and blessing to share with us. And I appreciate that from you always, my dear brother. But I think that this is one of those, and Jacqueline knows, I always talk about there's only win-win and lose-lose. And if you're in a win-lose and you think you've won, you haven't gotten the memo yet, so So with what you've shared with us, you have shifted the narrative. You have shown us what it looks like, which is so helpful to us, because when we see other people modeling that behavior, now we have, in fact, just that, the model from whence we can go forth. So, and I was teaching about meaning with my group yesterday, and this idea of isolation as being part of what's important for the existential aspect of meaning in life. And isolation can come from thinking I'm the only one in the world who experiences this, who feels this, who whatever, and that brings us into greater separation, right? Because it's just me. And we know that loneliness is about disconnection, right? So what you've created for us is for people who would have otherwise felt isolated and separated, and the grand loss that offers to both that individual and others, an opportunity, an invitation to come into connection and show them that no. And it doesn't mean that you're bad, and it doesn't mean that you're wrong. And whatever it is, take that opportunity, like you said earlier in the show, to reflect and understand and move forward intentionally with love for yourself and others. Because it's not just I'm angry, there's hatred, there's vengeance, there's I've been wrong, now I'm gonna da 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 da, because that's the lose-lose, right? So you've transmuted this energy into something beautiful. And I think, just without thinking, off the top of my head, what if all this happens so many people could be touched by what you just did and who you are?
Just this conversation alone has changed it, right?
It's not lost on me that I rescheduled from last Tuesday to this Tuesday.
That's right.
So there's those little synchronicities.
Oh my God,
right?
I just
I was just going to say the whisper, right?
It's the full moon, post the eclipse.
You know, the full moon, it shows up everything, right?
Right.
Isn't that beautiful?
And the massive eclipse cycle,
all the truths come out.
Happen, right? The portal is open to get a little woo-woo, right? Like, you just have to lean into it. Right. Be open to it.
It's not like you to be like double booked or have something else going on. And we were fortunate because our other guest who was supposed to be on today, as opposed to last week, Dr. Natalie Martinick, she's in Australia. It's 2:00 in the morning when she was coming on. And she also is really, and it just worked out. Yeah. Perfect. There you go. And doing what you, and so here's the other thing that really causes us to get into these negative or bad states and become less present and unconscious is the reactivity. And this idea that, this happened to me and I'm going to control the outcome, or I'm going to. And I think what causes us tremendous joy and excitement is bringing forth our gifts, our blessings, our passion that drives us to create and to move forward and to be curious. What's next? What can I do? How can I this? As opposed to getting stuck, notice my language, in something that you go, well, now I have to control. Now I have to control this parameter and that variable and the other one and control is an illusion, but power, that's our God-given birthright. And to give up power for scraps of an illusion, boy, that's a bad negotiation. So you stay in your power when you stay in your joy, your curiosity, and your creativity, and connect it to that passion. So you do what you do and divorce yourself of the outcome, because you are not the only variable in that equation, but you weren't meant to have an outcome. Sure, you can have an intention for an outcome. You can think that's great, but leaving room for grace is, if you want to call it serendipity, if you want to call it chance, if you want to call it whatever you want to call it, I call it grace, divine grace. They all kind of work the same, don't they? In that you leave room for something new, better, exciting. And we need exciting to function well, right? So I appreciate just a few of those levels that we have unpacked here. What you have brought to the table for us and the divine timing. And look at this beautiful unfolding in front of all of our eyes of how it works. QED. How do you like that? I love it.
Paul, I have a bit of a question for you, and it's it's the real life question as well. You shared, you shared, obviously something very personal with us, and it's deeply valued and appreciated because, it affects so many people. I want to talk about your emotional state right now, because I think one of the things that we all go through in different, you talked about it earlier, right? The ups and downs and the ebbs and flows that we go through. This is something that can really put us into an emotional state, probably many emotional states, right? So really lots of waves of, and I'm not going to assume anything from you, whether that's excitement. Maybe it's good that you're gone and you get to create something new. But fear and anger and hurt and so many other emotions that could come up for you, both in the moment that it happened, and I'm sure potentially there's some rippling still around at this moment as things work themselves out. How are you what are the tools you're going to use in your own life in the next, whether it's today, it's over the next week, it's over the next 6 weeks, however long this starts to change? How do you manage the not so happy perfect emotions that may be coming through, and create that change that you were talking about just a few minutes ago, where we shift out of potentially this kind of bit of darkness, bit of a hole, and then start to shift to the other side of the light of consciousness. Can you
Can I
talk to us
interject
about?
something before? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I interject something before you answer? And that is the emotions that you mentioned, Jacqueline, whatever you're going through, Paul, or whatever somebody might be going through, these are natural and normal. Not that you have to go through them, but whatever emotions come up, that's fine. And that's authentic and that's real. Working through them is an act of faith and presence and respect for yourself, your divine maker, the universe, whatever, your family, your friends, your future, whatever you want. That's different than toxic positivity, which is to deny these and quickly move into a different state. I just want to bring that to everybody's attention.
And I was going to hit on that because I think that's really important. It's not suppressing them. We have for our kids and for myself, frankly, it's called the wheel of emotion, and it radiates out. It radiates out from the.
We use that.
Yeah. So it's like literally every outer ring on there I'm feeling, but the work is to allow it to come, acknowledge that it's a legitimate emotion, and then let it go. Not suppress it, but let it go and understand what is that thing that I'm feeling, name it. And as Sean Webb says from Mind Hacking Happiness, which is one of the people that I've worked through, he puts together this equation of emotions, and it's the expectation or preference compared to the thing that we identify as ourself, and then that creates the emotion. And so what I've spent as part of my time unpacking Gaia and whether I was going to stay or leave, I read his 2 books and went through his course. And a lot of what I did was, he calls it self map. So identify all the things that we call ourself, right? My house, my phone, my iPad that I'm talking to, my reputation, right? Whatever you want to attribute to it. And then really, really consciously understand and unpack, does that belong on my self map? Should that be part of myself? Kids are a perfect example. I'm not going to take my kid all the way off the self map, but she is an independent body. She needs to move out so that her actions don't directly represent me anymore. Okay, so now all of a sudden I'm cleaning up my self map. Then I'm looking at, what is my expectation or preference against those things, so that then I can start to regulate them. So now I have 2 dimensions to work through these emotions on. One is the thing I'm reacting to even my thing to react to? And 2, was my expectation or preference even valid in the situation? Back to that, you can't control it. It's just going to happen. So now all of a sudden I can feel these emotions, do the inner work of saying, what is that thing that I'm feeling and why am I responding to it? And is it me or not me? Because I will thank this situation for the amount of practical application and growth that I've been able to go to in the last 4 days. Because my father-in-law and my mother-in-law were here on Thursday, and I had to drive home. We didn't tell them that night. I had called my wife, my kids are at home, and because I didn't know what the situation was going to be. So not suppressing my emotions, but working through them and showing up in the environment that I needed to show up in, because I could have shown up in an angry, pissed off, fear-based mood, and that would have ruined my entire weekend, and then pushed that anxiety out into my kids and my in-laws who don't have the tools to work through these things. And then all of a sudden I'm a black cloud of negativity that has rippled through countless numbers of individuals for no fault of their own. I am not going to be responsible for that. So I pulled it back.
Can we tell all the dads that? Like, dads need to know that when they're coming home from their jobs, right? You got to take that breath and that moment.
Everyone,
right?
Not
Everyone.
just
Moms or dads,
everyone's,
whichever.
right? Like, because this thing has created a permanent connection to the outside environment and a disconnection to the actual intention and emotions that are intended to be conveyed through it. So we read everything on our phone with our internal dialogue that's based on our internal state. So of course we're going to see what we want to see in the world, positive or negative. So again, I think I'm ranting now, but it's important.
No.
It really is
No,
important.
it's good though.
Nope,
It's
we're loving
we
it.
need them, right? Right. We had that conversation about, this is your algorithm, right? How are you perceiving what's coming up in this beautiful device? I said earlier, when I opened my Instagram, all I saw was Earth Day yesterday, which to me was phenomenal. I don't
Right.
see no war comes up for me, no negativity comes up for me. I get all the positive affirmations. I have programmed my algorithm so that when I open my phone, it's going to feed me what I need, not what I don't need in my
Yeah.
life. And that's for
So
everything, right?
I don't know if you can see it on my phone, but mine's actually on grayscale. So
Yes.
I have turned off the color palette on my phone because I interact with it in the brain a different way than I did when it had all those colors and engaging lights and whatnot to it. So now it's created that disconnection from it because of that. To your point, it's the algorithm.
I love it.
What do I want to put in there, right?
Yeah.
But those are the things, because you can't do everything with your will and your self-control. You just don't have enough of it. It's a finite resource that you're going to use up. So you got to use these little things that start to take away the decisions that you need to apply to how you want to be, and just start to make them be the process that you operate your life with. Because if you have to make a decision every time you want to do something, they call it decision fatigue. Eventually you'll just stop making the decisions, and then you're just going through life. So that's the other piece of this conscious practice that I have, is to automate as many of the things that I want to work a certain way so that I don't have to decide on them. So,
Paul, I put up on the screen a comment that we got from one of our viewers who beautifully, and I think this is what I was talking about with the win-win, you have affected them in an extraordinary way, and I would like them now to have that effect on you. And it says, "Thank you, Paul. I've not known of anything that had happened. Your ways of managing and handling it brings wisdom and hope and enlightenment for all of us, and any of us have gone through similar experiences. Thank you ever so much. Our own truth speaks volumes for us, and that is so important. Thank you a million times." You see?
thank you for seeing me, Sandy.
Right?
Yeah.
There's
Exactly.
the ripple effect
Love
in
that.
action, folks.
There it is.
Live.
There it is, right there. Yeah, thank
All
you
right.
for that, Paul.
So we've had an amazing show so far. And, we like to end our show. We're already over time. And so thank you, Paul, for staying with us for a few more moments. We like to end our show with
our get off the couch moment.
Ta-da!
So, I think this is the perfect way to end this, because, Paul, so many people in your circumstances, the last thing they want to do is get on a live show and,
and then tell
be
the whole
all
world,
happy,
hey.
conscious, and all those things that would feel very difficult for many people to do. And what we know is that when a lot of us are in difficult situations, it's easy to curl up in a ball on the couch, turn the TV on, or whatever
Pull
else
out the Ben and Jerry's
on your phone, exactly, and not be able to move. And it's one of the things that we really like to do on the show, is give people that little moment, the inspiration. What can people do to get off the couch if they're suffering today, if they're in a similar circumstance that you may be in, trying to take steps forward in their life? What's the one thing you'd like to say to them to help them get off the couch today?
Yeah, I think the
Only
biggest
one.
thing, yeah, the biggest thing for me, and again, this is back from Brian Cain, is that the action can change the attitude, right? So if you are in a negative state, don't wait for a positive state to take action. Do an action that instills a positive state. And my wife, as we were walking, she was walking out the door this morning, said, "Go do something uplifting. Talk to humanities team."
Nice.
And here we are.
Right?
So,
there we go.
yeah.
There we go. I'll share something with you. My organization, 365 Give, we're all about giving back every day. And for exactly that reason, we know the benefits it has to the world, but we know the benefits that it has to each other. And we have a day coming up on Thursday. It's called Do One Give Day, where we encourage people just to go out and do one small act of giving for exactly what you're talking about, right? When we uplift others, when we put our hand out to help another person, it's our opportunity to feed ourselves, right? And to make ourselves feel the beautiful oxytocin that runs through our body, and to feel love and to feel connected to our true nature. And I want you to know today, this was your do one give, because you did exactly that for all of us, as you reminded us that when we give of ourselves, and you truly gave all of yourself to us today, when we do that for others, it's our opportunity to lift the others that may just need a hand. And I wanted to thank you for that, because you were the true example of what giving back is all about today. You were of service to all of us, just showing up when it would have been easier just to stay on the couch. So thank you so much for being present with us, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with all of us, and most of all, just showing up as your true self, because that's the example that we can all do for each other. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And it's 11:11, so this would be a perfect time to end the show.
There we go.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
We will see you soon. Looking forward to more work together with Humanities team. Dr.
Yeah,
Roshnak, over to you to close off.
Yes. So, the thing that we say about Mindset, Heartset, Reset, this amazing show with the most amazing guests, is that what we want to do is to help people to hit the reset button on their lives, to be able to nurture their heart sets, to be able to be aware of their mindsets. And we say that we're doing that through insightful discussions and authentic stories and practical tools. And I think today's show was sort of the poster child for authentic stories, practical tools, and insightful discussion. And so I want to thank you so much, Paul Tarell, for joining us today and bringing us your light, first and foremost, your insight, your heart and your mind, your expertise and your experience. So we really appreciate all that you brought to all of us. We are very grateful, and we hope that you will come and join us again soon. And we would like to know, Paul, how we can get in touch with you. I believe that there is a LinkedIn link. If we could have our beautiful production team put that up, that would be fantastic. But Paul, tell us how to get in touch.
Do that right now.
Yeah.
So I think given the state of transition and not necessarily knowing exactly which direction I'm going, LinkedIn is probably the best way to get a hold of me, through there. And I'm going to start now. I've kind of gone back and forth on whether I want to be a public persona or not. But I think the reality is that I have something to share, and I'm going to start opening up to that, and LinkedIn will be the starting point of that. So I'd say follow me there, reach out there. If you are interested in connecting with me to learn more about what I might be able to do to help you individually or as a business with the broad skill set that I bring to it, that'd be a way to do it. And more to come in terms of where this evolves to.
Yay. Thank you so much for that, Paul. So this is how you can get in touch with Paul Tarell, www.linkedin.com/in/Paul Tarell, Tarell. For those who would like me to read it for them. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, all of you audience who have joined us live and who join us in the recording. We hope that this has been enlightening and helpful for you, that you've gleaned something from there that would be useful for you in your life, that will connect to your heart set and your mindset and help you with your reset. If you want to get in touch with Jacqueline Way and 365 Give and Do and Give Day and all the beautiful things that she brings into the world, that's 365give.ca. I'm Dr. Roshnak Hashimoon. I'm at accesstothepath.com. If you have any questions for either one of us or Paul, now you know how to get in touch with every single one of us. As you've enjoyed this beautiful show, I hope that you connect also with our playlist and see our other absolutely amazing guests, their practical tools, insightful discussions, and authentic stories that might be able to help you in so many other ways. That's what Jacqueline and I are here for, to bring you the amazing people in the world that can help you, can support you, because we are all in oneness. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next week, Tuesday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. GMT right now because we're on daylight savings time, and 6 p.m. Central European summertime, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Every Tuesday live as we continue on with our Conscious Business series. God bless. Namaste.
Namaste.
And we wish you all the best.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.